Erie, Pennsylvania, 2018. I need to tell you about this story because it went around the entire world for the wrong reason. And everybody who read about it remembers a number on a scale. And nobody remembers his name. It was Keeno Butler. And he was somebody's little brother, somebody's dad, and somebody's grandpa. And what happened to him in that apartment was a whole lot worse than the headline ever let on. Okay, Keeno Butler. That's the name I want sitting in your head before anything else. Because in 2018, the internet got handed this story and went crazy with it. They forgot all about the victim in this case. He was 44, lived in Erie, Pennsylvania, one of those Rust Belt lakefront cities where the winters are just straight up disrespectful. And you could hop in your car and drive across the whole town before one song even finishes on the radio. By every account, from people who loved him, he was the loudest source of joy in whatever room he was standing in. I went and found his obituary, which almost nobody covering this case has bothered to do, and it says he was full of love and energy and had a smile that would light up a room. It lists what he liked, and the list is so ordinary that it kind of got me because it was pets and music and dancing and working. And then it said the best part of his life was time with his family, especially his daughter and his grandchildren. And you didn't hear me incorrectly, he was a grandfather at 44. His sister, Sandra, was the one who ended up speaking up for him publicly, and her description of him paints that household in about 2 sentences. Keeno was only 3 years older than her oldest kid, so think about that arrangement for a second. He came up right alongside her children, close enough in age to basically be one of them, and she ended up loving him more like a son than a little brother. At a vigil that spring, she told reporters, if you knew him, you would love him. And she said he could be a pest sometimes. And then she said she misses the pest. If you ever have a sibling who annoyed you well into adulthood, you already know the exact flavor of what she meant by that. One more detail about Keeno. He was a small guy, weighed about 120 pounds. And that number, if you've ever heard of this case, is the reason you've heard of him. And we're getting to why. Keeno was living with his girlfriend, Windi Thomas, at an apartment complex on East Avenue. Windi was also 44. Coverage has identified her as a former home health aide, which is about the only biographical fact anybody printed about her. Home health aide work is brutal and underpaid and overwhelmingly done by women, and the whole job is caring for people physically more fragile than you are. That was her resume walking into this. Past that, the public record on Windi Thomas is essentially a blank page. Her childhood, her family, any mental health history, any prior domestic calls to that address, all of it is missing. Trust me, I looked, and I would tell you if I had any information. Sunday morning, March 18th, 2018. They had been drinking. Reports indicate alcohol was heavily in the mix and that Windi wanted crack. An argument kicked off in that apartment and turned physical fast. She cut him with a folding knife. She hit him in the head with a wooden table leg. And then, with Keeno down on the floor of that living room, she brought her body down on top of his and left it there. Windi weighed around 300 pounds, and Keeno, as I mentioned, weighed 120. Quick math, that's a 180-pound gap between the two people inside that small, Erie apartment. Her attorney would eventually frame the ending as a drunken accident, arguing she passed out on top of him, and he suffocated underneath her. Police had a colder account. According to investigators, Windi admitted she positioned herself on purpose so some of her weight came down on his head. The Erie County Coroner ruled it a homicide, and the official cause was respiratory insufficiency secondary to blunt force trauma to the neck and thoracic compression, made worse by blunt force trauma to the head. Translated out of coroner and into English, his chest could not rise far enough to pull air in, and he had already been beaten badly before that. Windi Thomas called 911 herself and told the dispatcher she had killed her boyfriend. Officers found Keeno in the living room, and she admitted the whole thing before anybody had to build a case. Before she made that call to 911, though, She went out looking to buy crack, and one of the people she reached out to was a woman named Jessica Hoopsick. Okay, if that name pings something in the back of your skull, you have probably watched Netflix. Jessica Hoopsick was a figure from Erie's most infamous crime ever, the 2003 pizza bomber case, where a delivery driver named Brian Wells died when a collar bomb went off around his neck after a robbery. That whole nightmare became the documentary called Evil Genius. Hoopsick gave investigators a statement in this case too, and she would have been subpoenaed if this case had gone to trial. Two of the most notorious homicides in Erie history, 15 years apart, strangely running through the same person. Once the Associated Press picked it up, the story stopped being about Keeno Butler almost overnight. Every headline in America was a variation of the same 6 words about a 300-pound woman crushing her 120-pound boyfriend. And it ran in Denver and Detroit and Miami and Spokane and El Paso. It ran in French. It ran on Indonesian regional blogs. A domestic homicide in a town most of the country could not find with a map and a compass picked up international distribution purely on the mechanics of how the man died. And this had already happened once. In August of 2009 in Cleveland, a woman named Mia Landingham killed her boyfriend, who was 5'10", 126 pounds, by sitting on him while he was face down on the couch. They had 3 kids together. Her public defender told the judge there was a long history of domestic abuse between them and that she had no record. And in January of 2010, she pled guilty to involuntary manslaughter and walked out with 3 years probation, along with 100 hours of community service and no prison time. One of the victim's sisters asked the reporter whether that meant a person could sit on somebody and walk away with probation. And the scale at the prison only went up to 350 pounds, so they couldn't weigh Landingham. Guess which detail every single outlet in the country printed. Trial was on the calendar for December. Then, on December 3rd, 2018, Windi Thomas pled guilty to third-degree murder, which in Pennsylvania covers a killing done with malice and without premeditation that you would need for first-degree murder. Prosecutor dropped counts of aggravated assault, reckless endangerment, and weapons possession as a part of the deal, and her attorney called it fair for both sides. On December 21st, 2018, she sat in that courtroom without a visible expression and took 18 to 36 years in state prison. She could have faced 20 to 40. When the judge asked if she wanted to say anything, she apologized to the family and said that she was very sorry. And then the real number came out. Keeno Butler's body had more than 90 traumatic injuries on it, running from bruises to stab wounds. More than 90. The assistant DA kept telling everybody who would listen that the suffocation angle was swallowing the public's understanding of the violence involved. And he was right, because nobody outside Erie ever printed that number. Sandra Butler stood up and said her brother's killer meant to do it. Her words were, "She meant to kill him. She destroyed his body." She thought the sentence should have been longer, and she told the Erie Times-News that their mother still called out for Keeno every night. Windi Thomas is still sitting in a Pennsylvania state prison. No appeal, no new evidence, and the case stopped moving on the day of sentencing. The story kept moving, though. It came back around on social media, chopped down to a few seconds, with the stabbing gone, the beating gone, and Keeno's name gone from it too. Just a joke about weight, and then you swipe and move on. I get why that version travels. It's fast and nobody has to feel anything about it. The longer version is a guy in Erie who loved music, loved working, loved his family, became a grandfather before he even turned 45, and who annoyed his big sister so thoroughly that she went on the record about missing it. Keeno Butler. That is the version I would rather hang on to. Thanks for listening to 10-Minute Murder, bingeable true crime stories. I'm Joe, I'm the host, and here's an email. Subject, hey. Yo, Joe, quick one. Do you write these or do you just talk? Because if you write them, how long does one take? And if you just talk, how do you not say like every 4 words like I do? I got a public speaking class next semester and I'm dreading it. Later, Cody in Provo, Utah. Cody, yes, I do write them. I research them, then I write them, and then as I'm saying them, I kind of ad-lib a lot of parts of it, but the main details, the stuff that I absolutely can't get wrong, I don't want to get wrong because it's facts of the case. It would change the story. I do read it, but some of the other stuff I just kind of talk around it. I ad-lib a little bit, and I don't say every 4 words because I edit that out. Not all of it though, because some of it does slip in there and you can't do anything about it. I'm a big guy. I say a lot. I wish I didn't, but I do, and I think I'm too old to try to change it at this point. Hey, if you're a brand new listener to this podcast, welcome. Make sure you hit subscribe right now, and then do me a huge favor. Go to 10minutemurder.com because there you're going to find links to where you can follow the podcast on social media and also on different listening apps. If you're into brief stories about true crime, but some of them you wish were a little bit longer, or you had just longer stories in general, you can check out my other podcast. It's called True Crime Blueprint. Links for that are in the show notes of this episode. And that's going to do it. That's your episode for today. Thank you again for listening to 10 Minute Murder. See you next time.